All right, welcome back to another episode of Designing the Best You. Today, we're going to be taking a different approach to fear, okay? And we're going to be talking about how it plays out in our careers and in our health. Nothing new, right, in terms of our careers and health. But today's episode, let's think about this. If you think you do not have anxiety when it comes to promotions, negotiations, critical milestones on projects, searching for a new job, learning how to stand up for yourself, whatever, then here's the thing, y'all. You're stuffing your feelings instead of feeling your feelings, because I'm sorry, but humans are going to have some kind of anxiety, some kind of fear around those things, okay? Now, we're taught as Christians to be like, yeah, okay, all fear, fear casts out, or love casts out fear and whatnot. Okay, that's our goal, but we are going to be real as well, okay? We all have fears. We all have them, whether it's over little spiders, whether it's over snakes, whether it's over heights, whatever it is, okay? We all have fears. Let's just acknowledge that, okay? And we all get anxiety over different things throughout different stages of life. Something you may have been anxious about as a child, maybe you overcame that. Maybe something you weren't anxious as a child, now you're anxious as an adult or a certain situation. You get it, okay? But what you're going to notice is a pattern, okay? Remember, I come from an engineering and operations background. Patterns are my thing, okay? Data patterns are my thing, and that's what I like to go off of a lot, okay? But here's the thing, you got to take the time. I can't do it for you. No one else can do it for you. Your job is to slow down and take the time to notice, okay? So many professionals I work with, including myself, okay, say they take the time. Okay, raise your hand if that's one of you. But you really don't slow down enough to understand your fear patterns and how you handle situations. Because I'm telling you, you're going to handle situations very similarly. Is that a word? Similarly. But you're going to handle them very, pretty much the same way, okay? Unless you start to change that. But there is a pattern, okay? While so many of you high-achieving professionals are so incredibly capable of building pretty awesome careers. I mean, I've talked to a lot of you, and you guys rock it, okay? And you do it while dealing with so many terrible traumas that have happened, situations, a child has a situation, you have a situation, a family member, whatever it is, okay? And while you get through that, understanding how your childhood shapes the adult you became is absolutely vital for anyone who wants to advance their career. Anyone. Okay? Taking time to recognize how our grown, accomplished selves reconcile with our wounded, hurt inner child is so imperative, guys, okay? And I'm not just saying this because I read something somewhere. I've experienced it. Clients have experienced it. Okay, it's something somewhat newer these days. Nothing new is under the sun, but something that's being uncovered, okay? So I personally started to uncover this in myself and clients a few years ago in the midst of COVID, right? We all were fearful in some way or another, wondering what happened, why, right? We question everything about the world around us, our relationships with ourselves, others, you name it, okay? Every person that we ran into, we were questioning, right? Wondering what we were going to do, how we were going to handle this, how long this will last. We all remember it. Yes, okay? Many of our character traits, okay, became exacerbated, like hypervigiliance that was learned in childhood to survive. And we perceived so many threats around us. And what happened as it's coming out now through 2023 and 2024, okay, there are so many mental and physical conditions that have been a result of it, or they just were exacerbated, or they came out of hiding, okay? This happens. Every single person on this freaking earth has experienced it, okay? And many of us we love learning how to be better leaders. I mean, raise your hand if you have a bookshelf full of how to be a better leader, basically, in any way, shape, and form. Okay, we love learning how to be leaders. But at the same time, here's the thing, is we are afraid. Okay, and I don't even want to hear any of you like, I'm not afraid, I'm blah, blah, blah. Okay, we're afraid to do something that's going to negatively affect our careers. Okay, so I've been taking lately a different look at how our so-called adult fears are playing out in our careers and health, and there is a direct correlation between them all. So instead of looking at the challenges that we encounter as leaders, okay, and the trauma, or we can call it baggage, whatever you want to call it, okay, we've all got little traumas and big traumas, okay, from childhood. Let's flip it, okay, let's flip the switch, let's turn it around, and let's say, wait, there is an opportunity for improvement here. And if you guys don't like that phrase, go back and listen to last week's episode, because I talk all about how when I worked in corporate, how I used that phrase to move the needle forward in big ways, okay? But here's the thing, okay? When you say that, okay, you say, wait, there's an opportunity for improvement because being a leader is so difficult, right? Why not use that opportunity for improvement, that trauma, that baggage, right, to do this work, right? Like the uncovering of your hidden obstacles, that inner child work, you know, the work you know you need to do, but we do whatever we can to avoid it. I mean, how many of y'all avoid laundry? Right? We're like, we'll clean everything around it. We'll push it around. We'll like, whatever, right? This is the same thing. Same, you know what I mean? We do whatever we can to avoid it. We'll read all the 100 books that we have, thousands of books, whatever. We'll go to all the seminars, everything like that. And we're like, man, we're still struggling because we haven't done the inner work. Okay, we haven't taken that inner work, the things that have made us who we are today from our childhood, and taken that and said, okay, it was a bad childhood, or there were moments, or I had whatever it was. How can that be an opportunity to improve my leadership? Okay, how can I take the fear that I've been stuffing and use that as an opportunity for improvement in my leadership? Okay, so when I look back on my life and I ask, and I want you guys to ask this question of yourself too, was there a moment or a set of moments I was acting out as a child in the workplace because my trauma wasn't resolved? I'm going to have to laugh at that because I know now that answer is absolutely yes. Can I get a hallelujah, right? And I had to go through that and understand. I don't want you guys to go through all the years that I went of behaving like a child, tantrums and all. I want you to solve that as fast as possible. Now, everyone's got a different timeline, not per us, per God, right? To grieve things, to go through it. But when I started to do the deep, very, very, very deep inner child work, and it's not easy. I had to reparent myself. I'm still reparenting myself while parenting children. And many of you out there are as well, okay? But when I started to do that, guys, I started to become a different type and better leader in my home, in my business, with employees, in personal relationships. And you're like, how, Vanessa? What happened? And what happens to all my clients is there's a moment when you no longer, and I want you to listen to this, there's a moment when you no longer can pretend that acting out isn't possible anymore. Right? There's this little voice in our heads that we know is there. It's sitting there. It's like, hey, how you doing? Right? And we ignore it. But we know in that one moment, after you've had all the tantrums, after you've done all the things, after you've got all this fear built up, right? You're like, enough. I can't pretend anymore that I can handle things. And my actions are coming from a dark place of unresolved business. Right? Just like we in our businesses, in our jobs, right? In our as a leader in our communities, as a leader at our jobs, right? We're like, there's something that's got to be fixed. I know it's got to be fixed, but man, all these things that are happening around me are a result of not resolving this thing. right? So it's getting past the shame and the guilt, okay? And when you realize, you recognize that your past is actually your present, and we're all walking around with a past that is invading our present, I want you to take just a sigh of relief. I even just did that right now as I was talking, just right? And I want you to understand, guys, we have all been hurt. No one's hurt can be rated on a scale, okay? We've all been hurt. We've all been wounded. We all haven't necessarily experienced significant childhood trauma. Maybe some of us were beaten to a pulpit. Maybe some of us were beaten to a pulp. Sorry. Maybe some of us were sexually assaulted many times by a family member we trusted. Maybe we just were verbally abused and told how bad we were. Maybe that stuff didn't happen, but maybe you had something from at school that you were bullied, or someone said something to you, or maybe it didn't happen until you got in the workplace. Guys, we've all been hurt. Maybe someone break up with you and said some mean things, or whatever it was, okay? We've all been hurt. Maybe we wanted a parent to show up at a game or something like that, or a tournament, and they didn't, or they were late, and you've been carrying that, okay? Let's get past that shame and guilt, okay? Let's stop that, okay? I want to give you an example. Okay, because we all like examples that we can relate to. As I said, some of us have been abandoned physically and emotionally by a caregiver or parents, right? Those could be one and the same or separate in our childhood, okay? And then what happens in that family unit is that child takes on a specific role. And what that role is, it's like they got an early promotion, okay? They got promoted, and they had to assume that physical and emotional responsibility for that caregiver or set of caregivers. Sometimes some of us grew up in homes where both parents were not physically or emotionally present or able to do all the things, right? Maybe it was a sibling, they had to take care of the siblings because the parents weren't available, whatever it is, okay? That child had to assume that role. It's not for a child to assume, right? We know that as adults. We're like, that's crazy. But when you're actually grew up in that, you're like, well, I just had to do what I had to do, right? People are like, oh, well, you're so grown up and everything. I know that was me. I hated hearing that because I didn't want to be grown up. I wanted to experience a childhood of play and fun, and my mom and dad being there for me and getting excited for me for all the things, not the things they wanted to or had time for, but all the things. Anyways, but what happens is when these children grow up, as they're growing up, they're getting early lessons of, and this is why I'm trying to put different spins on them so you see, okay? They get early lessons of how to be a caring leader. Now that caring leader can go way into codependency, or it can just be like they're charismatic. They want to be responsible for so many people around them because they weren't cared for. They want to care for other people, if that makes sense, okay? And this is a huge message. It's so important. So I want you to listen in, because how many of you in the midst of your career, or so during COVID, right, felt the need to make sure that everyone was okay around you, right? It was a few months ago, I was working with a past client who came back, and she goes, okay, Vanessa, I want to level up some things and whatnot. And we were talking about what had happened during COVID with her. And she worked in human resources, high-level business partner. And she goes, COVID was an amazing experience for me, but it was so tough. She goes, I didn't leave the office until I knew that all the employees were taken care of. They know how to fill out paperwork. They know how to do all these things. But deep down, as we walked through that experience and we walked through some previous experiences, then we went back into her childhood and we realized that she's always been a caregiver because of some things that had happened to her in childhood. Okay? So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's this stuff, these traumas can produce so much good in us. But here's the thing, is a child can take one or two stances as they're growing up. let's say a child had a parent who died in a car crash or a plane crash, okay, at 9 years old, 9, 10 years old, okay? They can actually take the route, right? This is just how they were created and what God's plan was for them. They can go, okay, they have the ability to handle shocks that are going to happen in the workplace. How many of y'all have like, that wasn't expected to happen, right? Oh my goodness, right? And that helped, what happened is it helped them get through the trauma, right? Or they shut down, right? So if they had people that were surrounding them with so much love and so much grace and all those things prior to the crash, they will have a better chance at bouncing back, but they are able to handle those shocks, those just unannounced things, right? They'll be able to handle a layoff better. They'll be able to handle, they're still going to grieve, they're still going to be upset, but they're not going to just go so far down in depression and sickness and all that type of stuff. Then you have, right, a child who has been just kind of left to handle that trauma on their own. Maybe their parents were all they had, they was the only child, and now they're in foster care. It's a whole nother story, right? Or maybe their parents were substance users, or one of them was, and one was a codependent, one was just emotionally shut down, whatever it was, and they died. And sorry, I don't want anyone to like think that this is all about death, but this is just a traumatic situation that people can relate to. And they had no one around, and they go in a foster care system, and they don't thrive like they should. Being a parent is tough, right? But it's also our job to raise our kids the best that we can with our circumstances. But once we know what we know, we have a responsibility to do something about it now. And not doing something is a choice too, and we know that, right? Okay, so let's move on to something more in the workplace here that you can relate to. Let's think of the greedy salesman. We all know those, right? The greedy salesman. We're like, oh my God, each one of you has probably had an experience with at least one, whether you worked with them personally or you dealt with one in a store or whatever it is, okay? But let's say you're working with one. Excuse me. I worked with a few in my life, okay? I loved to hate them half the time in corporate, okay? They got stuff done, but they annoyed the crap out of me, right? Now, many of the salespeople are hustlers and can act incredibly greedy from, to people who are maybe just salaried because they have a commission. I mean, they're providing for their families in the same way that you are, right? Except they have to work differently to provide for their families. They have to meet certain goals to be able to get X amount of money. So they're hustling in a different way. It's not better, anything. It's just a different way, okay? Now, one of my clients a few years ago was struggling to get out of his current company. He's like, I don't like this company. And he wanted, in quote, a better one, okay? I hear that so much. We're like, we want a better job. We want a better culture. We want a better, type thing, okay? Sometimes that is 100% true. The company is just toxic and whatever. Sometimes it's you. Sorry, not sorry, okay, that I said that. And that was all in his words, right? He wanted a better one. So I asked him a series of questions. I said, okay. And I'm not going to disclose his name, but I'm like, okay. Why did you want out of your current company? And what would make another company better? Now, I'm not tooting my own horn here, but if any one of you have worked with me before in any capacity, you know that people love to open up to me, okay? They trust me. And this sales guy, after quite a bit, he started to open up to me. He had 4 kids, okay? And one of them had a serious health issue. And he grew up in a home where his dad just could not seem to make ends meet. And as a child, he didn't get to do the things he wanted to do, right? And we all have things that we want to do and parents say no and we're like, blah, blah, right, type thing. But he really didn't get to do a lot, okay? And so he made a promise to himself when he was younger that he would do whatever it took to make sure his family wouldn't suffer as he did. Oh, and to note too, his mom would smoke marijuana and drink many nights during the week, so she just emotionally and physically, I guess, wasn't there. Okay, so that didn't help. So you can see this like compound effect, right? Now, if you look at his situation, he had a fear. right? We're talking about fear here. He had a fear of not having enough to survive because he didn't in childhood. Any amount of money that his mom would get, she'd go spend it on stuff that she didn't need. His dad was just doing what he could to make ends meet, but he wasn't trying his best from what this guy was telling me, okay? Maybe he was, okay? But what it looked like in his adult life, okay, is his coworkers at his current company saw him as being greedy because he was winning awards and accolades, and they were, as he said, turning on him. So he's like, I don't want to be around that, right? They would tell him they literally told him this a couple times. He was being greedy. Let someone else be at the top. I could see both sides. Hey, if you can get to the top every time, you do it. As long as you're being honest, you're being truthful. You don't be like, hey, you know what, Billy, you haven't been at the top for a while. I'm going to let you. No, right? You work to get to the top. At the same time, I can see it's like if other salespeople are busting their butt and they're like, man, I just can't beat this guy out type thing, right? They're going to see him in a different light if they haven't healed any of their traumas or done the inner work as well, right? Okay, so do we see where we're going with this? Okay. But what he was really doing he wasn't trying to be greedy in any manner. He was just trying to make sure that his family didn't suffer as he did in childhood, which is very honorable, okay? And by the way, here's the thing. By him putting in so much work at his current job, he suffered physically too. So we did some inner work. We worked through a lot of that stuff. He did end up leaving his current company and going to a different one. It wasn't better, it wasn't worse. But we taught him the skills to regulate his nervous system, to do the inner work. He worked with a therapist on a lot of that part. And he ended up working less hours, making more, and being more satisfied with his family and things like that. He was able to pay for some of the serious medical stuff they had to deal with. All the things. I can go into that story another time, but that's what we see. We have that someone has a fear in them and it drives them. Okay, whether it's good or bad or seen differently by other people, right? It drives people. People are always, and we all know this, always going to have opinions of us. I've had people say some pretty nasty things about me as a person, as a business owner, as a client. Clients have told me things, and you know what? Some true. Okay, I have to check myself. My kids have told me things, and I'm like, ooh, that hurts. Or why did you little kid, basically. But you have to check yourself and say, is it actually true? And if it is, then what do I need to do about it, right? So, we have to, it's our responsibility, as I said earlier, we've got to work through our own baggage. Once we know what we know, right? We don't know what we don't know. But once we know what we know, we do have a responsibility to start handling that, to start unpacking that baggage, okay? So another example, sorry, I'm a little stuffed up here. Another example is anger. So if you grew up in a home that was chaotic, it was angry, it was unstable, you never know what was going to happen, right? You're like, when dad walks through the door today, is he in a good mood, bad mood? And if I'm in a good mood or bad mood or opposite, am I allowed to be that or not, right? Okay. Conflict at work is something you probably wanted to avoid at all costs, or it scared the daylights out of you, made you sweat if you had to, approach conflict in any manner. Raise your hand if you've been there and you had that fear, or still do have that fear of conflict at work, even at home, right? It's conflict. It's not going to be just at work. It's going to be at home too, right? It's going to be all areas. You basically are in fear of people hurting each other, right? That goes back to that caring leader. You're in fear of people hurting each other or them hurting you in some way. Because, right, how many of you have heard it's always going to end up in a fight, right? Go ahead, battle it out, right? I'm sure many of you have heard it, okay? Now, do we all, as I've said, experience fear and anxiety? Yeah, of course, we're human, okay? But when we work to build up the skills to being able to handle the fear and anxiety, what happens? We overcome obstacles that are holding us back from getting that next job, the next promotion, closing a deal, right? You can experience, here's the thing, You can't experience that fear or anxiety knowing it will end, okay? It's going to happen. Because here's the thing, when you haven't worked through the deep stuff and you don't have the tools to get past those fears, you don't have the tools to get past the anxiety over situations, guess what? Okay, here's the thing, is not only do you get stuck in your career and you stay stuck, y'all, like you're just sitting in quicksand, you can't get out, your physical health deteriorates. Guys, fear, okay, not only does it destroy our thought patterns, not only does it destroy like our advancement in our career, it weakens our immune systems. Remember COVID? Fear? They wanted fear, okay? Whoever, whatever created COVID, they wanted us to be afraid. And so how many more people were getting sick? Right? Okay, I'll just end it there. But fear, it also causes cardiovascular damage, GI problems like ulcers and IBS. It decreases your fertility. So if you can't get pregnant and stuff like that, think about that. Are you fearful of something? Even just being fearful of being a parent, okay? And sometimes it is as simple as that, and sometimes it's not, okay? Fear, do you know what also happens? It ramps up our nervous system. Okay, it keeps us in that chronic state of stress. We all know, like you want that state of stress when you're getting chased, when you're coming head on with a semi, whatever. Like you want that, right? Okay, you don't want that all the time. Okay, and fear keeps us in that high level chronic state of stress, okay? And that causes issues with our adrenals. Makes us look like we have things like Addison's disease. Makes us look like we have all these different issues. It causes weird brain activity, right? Your thyroid is all kinds of crazy and it doesn't function the way it's supposed to. Our metabolism's off, so we start gaining weight, okay? It also, when our nervous system is dysregulated because of fear, it can put us in a state of freeze, right? We can start dissociating, right? Ever been around someone who's dissociated? They're kind of just staring blankly. They're like not there. Yeah, they're frozen. They literally don't know what to do next, okay? And we've all been there at some point, but some people that is like their chronic state of stress, okay? We get that nasty brain fog that so many of you guys complain about. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't think clearly. I can't think, like, because you've got some deep hidden fear that's causing stress, that's causing your brain to be inflamed. Okay? Our bodies, our hormones, they're all over the freaking place, all over. Women, I mean, our bodies are always crazy as it is, but I mean, man, it goes out of whack, okay? You've got your testosterone drops like crazy, okay? You feel tired but wired. You maybe even go to the gym and you're like, I can't even lift the same amount of weight anymore. What's happening here? I can't run as far or fast. This is not normal. You're right, for me, it's not normal, okay? Our bodies literally can't even fight off that common cold. Our cells, what happens is we're in that chronic state of stress that we're fearing some threat that doesn't really exist, right? That's technically what fear is. Our cells literally start to form a calcified shell, a hardened shell around them. And you can't get anything in or out. We can't detox, right? We get constipated. We have all kinds of issues from fear. From fear. Isn't that crazy? I mean, it's crazy, but it's not. It's real to us, right? And then we have the emotional health aspect, okay? We may have dealt with emotional abuse as a child, and then you have things like you have this inability to have loving feelings. You might be caring, but you might not have loving feelings, okay? You have this learned helplessness, right? You're playing the victim. You might not want to, you might not be intentionally doing it, but you've got that learned helplessness, okay? You've got mood swings, you've got obsessive compulsive thoughts, okay? You have bitterness towards others, okay? You have a loss of trust. Y'all, I mean, this list can just go on and on and on. And no, we're not going to solve it all in one supplement or one session type thing or a month or whatever. This takes some time. It does. And it's different for everyone. Okay. These physical and emotional issues have an impact on our careers. Okay. And I was reading an article in the American Journal of Managed Care on this. It's not just the holistic community that's recognizing this. Okay. It's all of managed care. Okay. And I want to go back and address that hypervigilance again. I think this is something that high achievers share. I'm big on data. Before, during, and after COVID, I've collected a lot of data on you high achievers. Okay. And it's something that high achievers share, but we talk about too little, if not at all. Okay. I was extremely hypervigilant, and I still am. I'm much better today than I was 10 years ago, okay? But that's from my childhood, as it is with many of you. And the problem with hypervigilance is that it distracts us. Like I said, it keeps us in that state of fear, right? That chronic states. Our nervous system is so dysregulated. We're focused on surviving, okay? When we don't have to focus on surviving, okay? How do I want to define this? Hypervigilance, in my own words, I see as being hyper aware of everything around us. Like you're taking your little kids into a big unknown city and you're like constantly scanning. You're like, what's this? Okay, what are they doing? Like, what? You're not even taking in and breathing in and enjoying what's around you because you're so hyper aware of all the little things that touch your senses, everything. Okay. Now you definitely want someone who has got hypervigilance in a state of emergency. I'm telling you, they take action. They leave the feelings out of it. They're just like, everyone needs to be safe, right? That's that caring leader again. Okay. But again, hypervigilance has been studied and it's been established, typically as a result from trauma. Okay. So those of you with PTSD, complex PTSD, those of you who grew up with parents who were substance users, not emotionally present, mentally ill, so on. As kids, right, you take it on, as kids typically do, a belief system that my responsibility is to get everything right. And then if I did, Dad wouldn't be drunk. Mom would pay attention to me. One of them would have an explosive outburst. I whatever. Right? And then you take it into schoolwork. Okay, if I could just get these type of grades, if I could just perform in sports, and then it pulls into the workplace and it just keeps going. Okay. Now, like I said, this can be like a superpower. All right. And like, for example, in my second job, when I worked at a denture manufacturer, we had an employee collapse from a heart attack in the hallway. I was grateful that I knew CPR and we were able to handle it and get the paramedics there. I was able to say, hey, this person do this. Hey, this person do this. And I wasn't like, oh my God, what do I do? Type thing. I was like, boom, like it's hard to explain unless you are, or have been dealing with hypervigilance yourself. You literally just flip a switch. You're like business mode, 100%, boom, go. And we also had another way to shop fire. We had to get everyone out. And this was like early before a lot of office people were there. So it's like, hey, union people, like boom, boom, people are freaking out. Oh, I got to save this. I got to save that. Like, I got to go get my purse. No, you get out, right? Like, this is what you go out this door. You go out this door. Like, people weren't paying attention to the fire plan, nothing. And it was like, boom. So I knew exactly what to do to manage the situations and people. And the hypervigilance has also allowed me to dive deep into problem solving. Looking at issues from every angle possible. I cared so much about people, and I made sure that people like minorities were heard because I, in my family, was a minority and wasn't heard. So I wanted to make sure too. But like I said, there is a negative side effect to this, right? It's a fear. There is a fear of surviving. I would drive people at some of these companies crazy, and probably in other areas of my life too. I know my husband's expressed that too, because I took things so literally. For example, someone would say, this is red, or here, like my cup, if you can see it, this is red. And I'd be like, well, what you really meant to say is that is burnt orange, color, whatever it is on the, what is that scale? It's a hex color, blah, 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 right? I took things so literal, okay? It was basically like a hyperfactualism, especially when that emotion of anger, right? Circling back to the anger, right? Is denied. And that's typically what happens in childhood is that emotion, a strong emotion like anger is denied. Like you're not allowed to be angry. You can't be angry at that. And here's the thing, okay? Actually, I'm going to come back to that. So in an emotionally abusive or verbally abusive home, sometimes physically abusive too, anger is denied because what happens is it becomes like a prosecutorial vigilance, okay? Right? If you're angry, it's like everyone just starts digging at you and asking questions. Wow, like you shouldn't be like this. And you're like, okay, whoa, right? Defense, back off. You're being offensive, like back off, right, type thing. It just cycles and it's nasty. And then in the workplace, now y'all, I know you can relate to this, micromanaging, okay? None of us like to be micromanaged, but some of us are micromanagers, okay? Which my definition of micromanaging, and it's married to perfectionism. Both, again, stem from childhood. Not being good enough, I'm going to keep leveling up. And so what happens is when something in the workplace, a micromanager, like you've got a micromanager, when and so what I see in individual coaching and organizational coaching is when there's micromanaging as like the, what do I want to call it, predominant leadership style at a company. So when I see this, I help clients to understand, as I do with myself, that their hypervigilance is a good thing. It's something that kept them safe as a child and such a wonderful survival strategy, okay? Because they had to know what was going on to understand what they were going to do next. They strived to achieve, but to survive. But now you have to ask yourself, do I really need to worry about whether I'm safe? Do I really need to have that fear, right? Is that threat of not being safe still present? Chances are the programming up here in that brain of yours and in your body is, but the actual threat isn't. You're still having those mental and emotional breakdowns and your physical health is still a mess, but that true threat is gone. Okay, and you're like, yeah, Vanessa, hear me out. The power that we have as adults is vastly different than the power we had as children, right? So imagine you're that person. You've been doing so well, right? You're such a great worker. You're working for that promotion. Your biggest fear is that someone finds you out. You're a fraud. You're not good enough. You don't know enough, or whatever it is, okay? What I tell this person, and this person is the old me, and it's clients on a regular basis here, what I say is, as an adult, what would it feel like in your body to no longer have that fear? And the reason I ask this is, if any of you have read The Body Keeps Score, is that our body is the one that holds the power. Daisy! Sorry, dog. Is the body holds that power. And it holds the pain. It holds the disease. It holds the jumpiness. It can't calm down. But here's the bonus. Daisy! Here's the bonus. We feel something in our body before our mind is able to discern. So when I ask, how does it feel in your body as an adult? What it does is it enables you to envision having a different relationship with that thought, to create a different feeling when that thought or experience comes up. For example, I mentioned anger, right? It's an intense feeling that so many people experience during a job search rejection, right? Or when a colleague gets the promotion that you thought you should have. Anger is such a great and beautiful emotion, guys, okay? I don't want you to suppress it in any way, shape, or form. There's two sides, right? One is that you can use it to hurt yourself and others by either stuffing it or, right, which when you stuff it, it brings all kinds of physical ailments and all the stuff and then whatever, or by blowing up. And when we blow up, we use words that hurt, we may break things, we may whatever, okay? Whatever blowing up is to you. The second thing is to use it for justice, and that is its original intent, okay? We may have a fear of being rejected again and get angry about it, that emotion around it. And we can have valid injustice, right? We can have a valid reason saying that this is not right. I should have gotten that job. I should have gotten that promotion. I should have whatever it was, okay? But if we can align our feelings, which feelings float away, thoughts we can hold captive, okay? But if we can align our feeling and the thoughts, that is where we can take the fear and our emotion associated and refocus it into something that is going to move us forward and not keep us stuck, right? You think of like Martin Luther King, right? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., right? What did he do? He was angry at the civil rights stuff, right? He was angry at that. He was seeking justice, but did he ever hurt anyone? No, he didn't. He was careful about his words. He was a caring leader, and he drove people to justice. He drove people through his anger, through his passion, through his like, this is not right mentality, to movement, to change things. And that resulted in being a better lead. That was from being a better leader, from him doing the internal work himself, right? And that's what I mean by we have more power as adults than as children. As children, we kind of have to do what mom and dad say, right? But as an adult, now that we know what we know, okay, we get to take charge of how we're responding to fear in our minds and our feelings, changing our bodies as a result, and ultimately changing the trajectory of our career and lives, okay? When we overcome those fears, we can face each and every day differently, but it's going to take work from you, okay? And if you need help with that work, I'm always here. If you want to talk about the issues that you're having, I'm here. This is what I do. This is what I've been gifted to do, and I'm going to continue doing until the day that I die. So don't wait, okay? So if you're ready to advance your career by removing blocks that are keeping you stuck, click on the link in the show notes. You can get on a call with me or reach out via social media. I'm hanging out on LinkedIn these days, and let's keep on designing the best you.